Hello, sir, and welcome back to my channel. I know I'm back. I'm back. I know it's been a little quiet for the past almost 4.5 weeks, but we're back. Happy New Year. How's everybody's doing? Are you doing what you're gonna do? Are you on your goals? If you're not, get on it. Get on that. Get off your ass and do what you gotta do. So, with that being said, let's get on with today's case. Just a disclaimer, be prepared to be shook. Honestly, be prepared to be shook, okay? So, let's get to it. Warning, the following presentation is intended for mature audiences. This case contains graphic descriptions of a crime as well as crime scene photos, strong language, so viewer discretion is advised. So, the EyeBall killer. Charles Frederick Albright was born in Dallas, Texas, of August 10th of 1933, and that makes him a Leo. And there wasn't much said about like when he was tiny, like a baby or anything like that, because as soon as he was born, his mom pretty much just gave him up for adoption. It wasn't really a reason why to, like, there wasn't ever like nobody really found out who his mama was. So there wasn't really a lot that I can find out why she gave him up for adoption, either because she was too young or couldn't afford a baby or just didn't want a baby. So Charles did end up getting adopted by a couple named Dell and Fred Albright. And Dell was a school teacher. And she was very, very, very protective of Charles. And some people would say like, oh, it's just, motherly love and stuff like that. But other people would state that it was more of a, it's kind of mom that are obsessed. Those moms who are obsessed a little too much with their son. You know who you are. You better stop that shit. And she pretty much did everything for him. She helped him in everything, and she helped him a lot during his school years. And she was even able to help him so much to the point that he was able to skip 2 grades. And by the time that he was 15, he literally graduated high school at 15 because of his mom. Like, she helped him so much. And in his teens, it was reported that he would kill small animals with his guns that, his family would get him. Or if not, he would end up picking up roadkill that he would see and take it back home. And he would end up using, the animals that he killed and found, and he would use them to taxidermy them, when you stuff them and restore them, or I don't know how that shit goes, but he was really into that. And he told his mom that, I really like this. I would like to be a taxidermist. And his mom, being his mom, was very supportive of that. And she would go with him to pick up, roadkill or like animals. And Charles's criminal record would start. Remember, I laugh because it's uncomfortable, and that is how I cope. You don't like it? Then leave. So like I said, Charles's criminal career would start at the early age of 13. And he would pretty much get arrested for not major crimes. I mean, it is a crime still, but it wasn't like crazy yet. And he would end up getting arrested for petty theft, aggravated assault. And when he turned 16, he would end up going to Texas University. And while attending Texas University, he would end up getting caught stealing from a cash register that he was working at. Either I think it was like a restaurant or a store, making up money for college. And obviously with that, when he got arrested, they ended up also finding 2 guns and a rifle on himself. So they were like, hey, what do you need those for? Like, you're just a college kid. Why do you need 2 guns and a rifle for? But it's Texas. We're going to justify it. I'm a gun owner and I use it to protect my little self. I'm 4'11", so I mean, come on. There's only so much my own weight can only do, and shit. I'm not in a state to fight anymore. But that's Texas, you know, it was normal. I guess it can, I mean, it's a good and a bad thing that we do carry, but at the same time, some people do take it to an extreme. But that's them, you know, that's their right as an American to carry their gun. And I mean, obviously, they're like, hey, you're just a kid. Why the hell do you have two guns and a rifle? So for that crime of stealing cash, he would end up going to jail for just a year. And after he got out, he would end up attending Arkansas State Teachers College and would major in pre-med studies. But that, obviously, being Charles, wouldn't last long because he was again caught stealing from the school. I don't know what he was stealing, maybe chemicals for his taxidermy stuff, but that's all I could find, that he was just stealing equipment or supplies from the school. So they were like, nope. So instead of pressing charges or calling police, they're like, you know what? We're just gonna kick you out before you graduate, you know, as a punishment, you know, all this money you wasted on your studies for nothing. And I mean, he asked for it, like, come on. And when Charles got kicked out, he was literally unfazed by it. He was like, whatever. Like, we're gonna do us, we're gonna do it, we're gonna have a degree whether we have studies or not. So, Charles being Charles, he ended up faking his diploma, his degree, and he was freaking successful at it. He was able to get like the right documents, the right fake signatures for it, which he was able to give he was able to give himself his bachelor's and his master's degree. Now, Charles, hear me out. Bro, you could have freaking charged people to do this, man. I mean, obviously it's not ethical, you know, it's not right. But I mean, you could have made a couple bucks, you know, especially for those peppy kids who were all parties and shit and didn't really want to do nothing with themselves. But that's just me. He had missed a good opportunity to make some good money. But before he was kicked out of the university, he ended up meeting a girl, and you know, he made that girl his girlfriend. And right after she graduated, they ended up getting married and would also end up having a little girl. Charles's wife would then become a teacher as well because they went to the same school, you know, the teacher school. And with the fake degrees, even with his fake degrees, the fake everything, he wasn't even able to hold down a freaking job. Like, he wasn't even able to pull his own freaking weight with that. And with that, you know, him being the man of the household was like, fuck, estoy fallando. I'm failing. I'm not doing my own job to support this family. And would end up, you know, causing trouble by forging checks, lying on his credentials, which he would end up being called out on. Like, he would end up being called out on while he was teaching at a high school. And even Charles doing all that would only, like, even after everything, like, the school obviously reported him. You know, the school reported him having these fake credentials, and he went to court. And he didn't even go to jail for it, you know, for the checks, for the lying. He would only end up getting probation, which is like, bro, oh shoot, my hair. Jesus. It's just like, okay, I get it. Maybe they're not that big, but I mean, okay, I guess. And so obviously Charles's wife finding all this out when he was, you know, sentenced or in the court for all this, she was like, yo, our relationship is literally based on a lie. Like, you're not the person you are. Like, if you lied about A, B, and C, well, then what else are you lying about? Which, I mean, yeah, she has a right to call him out as well on his shit. You know, like, she's married to him and she has a child with him. So later on, she would end up leaving Charles in 1965, and their divorce will be finalized by 1974. Now, having, you know, no one to lie to, no one to kind of hide shit from, he was, you know, obviously only knowing the only thing that he does and only thing that he feels like he's good at, he went to, you know, back to his shit, back to his dumb shit of getting in trouble. And this would push him into stealing hundreds of dollars worth of merchandise from a hardware store, which he would get caught and would end up serving 2 years in jail. And like many times before, in cases like this, from the 2-year sentence, he would end up only serving 6 months. So I don't know, maybe because he was doing good, being a good boy in jail or something, no sé. But y'all guys need to get your shit together and let them serve their sentences that y'all guys gave. But sadly, in 1981, Charles's mom, Dell, would end up passing away. And I think it was basically from old age, if I'm not mistaken, or a kidney failure, if I'm not. A lot of reports said different things, so I'm just gonna put those two out there. And when he went back home for the funeral, he ended up staying there for quite a while, and he ended up making some friends, and those friends would end up confiding and trusting him so much that they would let him take their like I said again, some of these reports are very different. So in the report, the child that they trusted Charles with, they would say that the daughter would be either 9 to 14 years old, which, I mean, at the end of the day, she's a child. So Charles would end up molesting this little girl every time he took her to the park or would take her to go get, a snack or ice cream or whatever. And she did come up to her family about it, like right away. And obviously the family, thankfully, ended up reporting Charles. And he was prosecuted, but he would end up denying it and saying that, that they were just trying to tarnish his reputation or just be mean, I guess, against him in a way, that they are like, quote unquote, jealous of him because he had all this freedom. No one's jealous of you for Charles, okay? No one knows about you, okay? And with Charles, being Charles, can you guess what they end up punishing him with? If you guess only probation, you guessed right. Even though he was prosecuted for it, even though he had a witness going against him about it, he was only given probation for that crime. Like, shit, dude, like, goddamn. And it pisses me off because nowadays you kind of do more for a little fucking ounce of weed than, like, breaking a child. But that's just me. So fast forward to 1985, Charles would end up meeting a woman named Dixie. And right away, he was trying to sweet talk her, trying to like, hey, come live with me. I'll take care of you. I'll do A, B, and C for you if you come live with me. And she was like, okay, bet, I'm gonna go live with you. You seem promising. You're saying that you're gonna take care of me and so. And no, that did not happen. As soon as Charles saw Dixie, relaxed, not with her guard up or anything, he was like a switch. Like, hey, you know what? You need to go work. You need to go pay these bills. You need to go buy me food. You need to make me food when you get out of work. You need to do A, B, and C. And she was like, yo, shit, I thought you were going to take care of me. I'm not going to take care of you. Like, I mean, do something for me. But he would end up kind of putting her in her place, you would say, by being physical with her. And her being like, fuck, okay. So she ended up doing that. Charles would later on get a job as a paper delivery guy. But he didn't get this job just because, like, I need to wake the fuck up and be a man and support this household, bring my own weight or something. No. He would choose this job just specifically delivering mail because how can I say this? How can I say this? Jesus, I can't even say it in English or Spanish. Jesus. It benefited him in a way, this specific job, because he was out late delivering paper, and he was also in the early morning delivering paper, which I didn't even know they delivered paper back in the day, like late at night, which they did, which is like, it's crazy. Like, why did he not deliver at night? Like, you can wait till the morning. But that's just me. Maybe the route or whatever, the way they had things set up, it was just that. But like I said, he ended up getting this job because he wanted to finally act out on his very twisted ways. So when this case took place, it was in the 90s in Dallas. And at that time, Dallas was really, really heavy on the crime rate. And in fact, in 1991, the city of Texas had like over, I think, 500 murders occur that year alone. So it was bad. And there's even this Netflix documentation about it. I'll go ahead and put it that watch it, because you're gonna be baffled about all the crimes that have taken like place, especially here from like Texas, or like especially for me near here, places that are kind of not that far. So let's get back to it. Sorry, I just kind of had to add that in there. So on December the 13th of 1990, police were contacted and informed that there was a dead body in the neighborhood in Oak Cliff and the red light district, And so police, when they went over there to see the crime scene, when they got there, girl, it was gruesome. It was horrifying. They were horrified, like, of what they saw. And it was a body of a young woman, and she was half naked, and the only thing that she had on was her t-shirt and her bra. And you could see that her chest was covered in like bruises, that like if someone beat her on her chest. And you could also see that she was shot in the head. So right away they ruled that as a homicide. And there was no gun or other evidence at the crime scene. And so when the young woman was found, sorry, she looked like if she was posed, like if they did it on purpose to kind of set her body up to make it seem more like, oh my God, for whoever found the body would be pretty shocked, and it did the job. Obviously it did the job, because even police, when they got there, they were like, the fuck, And it didn't really take long for police to ID her, because one police officer that was there at the crime scene knew the victim right away, and the victim was Mary Pratt. And Mary Pratt was a 33-year-old mom, and growing up, she lived outside of Dallas with her family that she loved and adored. And Mary was a very loving and kind person. And at the time of this case taking place, Mary was working as a lady of the night, a sex worker, and which there was a lot of women doing that at the time. It was very, very hard times at those times, So the night before Mary was found, she was working, there at the Oak Cliff at the red light district, and police made the connection that maybe her killer was one of her clients, and maybe they got a little rough, or they told her something, or she said something, and they just connected it right away that it's a possibility that her killer was a client. And when police got the autopsy report, they realized that they had a real sicko in their hands, because when they read the autopsy, the medical examiner, he reported that Mary's cause of death obviously was the single gunshot wound to the head, and she was shot with a .44 caliber. And as she was conducting her, usual routine of the autopsy of the body, she took in notes like her height, her weight, any birthmarks, scars, tattoos or piercings. And obviously she had to note down what the color of the eyes, what the victim's eye color was. So when she got to, try to open the eye and lift up the eyelid, there was no eye. And I'm guessing for one eye to be gone was pretty normal, because obviously when you get shot in the head, that bullet might ricochet in your head, or she imagined maybe it went into her eye and it ruptured, or, popped it or something. So she didn't really think nothing of it for the first eye. But when she got to the other eyelid, she was like, no, you're done. No, there was no eye. Like that Mary didn't have her eyes, and when the examiner was taking note of it, it was like, what the heck? You know, like she was just baffled. So when police saw that, they were like, okay, like what the heck? They were even more of a like, what the heck moment, because Mary's killer actually removed her eye to keep like as a trophy to remind him of what he's done. And the eyeball was removed very clean. So it's like, bitch, how do you remove an eye clean? Like, I feel like an eye, it's like one of those like, I feel like it's like a tripod. I don't think I should be comparing it to a tripod. But that's how I figured it. I feel like that's how it is. Like an eye, I feel like an eyeball feels like those candy Halloween eyeballs. Like they're gonna be squishy. They're gonna be, they're gonna be like that. So I was like, how the hell do you, like, I mean, if I was a killer and I took eyeballs, I think the cleanest way I think I could ever do it is either with a spoon or with like an ice cream scooper. Like, what the heck? So back to the story. So the medical examiner noted down that the eyes were, they were taken out in a very professional way. So they were also worried because now they realized that the person who did this to Mary now has, either a medical or surgical background, or either they studied or they just have the skill to do that. So the first thing, police did in the investigation was to go talk to the other sex workers. And Mary would work, like I said, in the Oak Cliff area, the red light district area. And they ended up asking them if they saw anything or they heard anything. And they would end up getting a really huge lead from a girl named Veronica Rodriguez. And in fact, Veronica would inform them that, hey, you know what? I was there when they killed Mary. I was there. And the only reason I was able to escape was because I kind of fought off and I freaking bolted. So they were taking this into account. And Mary pretty much stated that this man came up to them, obviously looking for their services. And he was like, you know what? I'll take both of you. So he was going home with 2 girls. And I'm kidding, he ended up taking the girls to a field. And right away, like Veronica said that he ended up getting violent. He ended up like just attacking both of the girls. And police were kind of like, do we believe her or not? Because it wasn't the fact that, because she was a sex worker. It was the fact because Veronica had a history of drugs. She was a drug addict, and that's why she was working as a sex worker to support the drugs. And like I said, they didn't believe her because it wasn't because she was, sorry, I'm saying because. They weren't like against her because of what she did, like telling herself being a sex worker. They didn't believe her fully was because she would make up stories or be very dramatic to some things when she was on drugs. And sadly, when she was making this report and telling them like, hey, just to let you know, while the whole attack was happening, I was also high on drugs. So they were kind of a little bit like, stuck, like, okay, so what do we do? Like, do we believe her? Do we not believe her? So they just ended up taking it down and just leaving it there, like just in case of anything. And when they asked her like, hey, do you by any chance know how she looks like? Or the attacker, by any chance what the attacker looks like? And sadly, Veronica would be, at a stump. She'll be like, oh shit. She said it like I was too high to pay attention, honestly. She said it. She was too high to pay attention. And sadly, for Mary's case, it would go cold for a bit. They were trying. I give them that. Even if it was like a sex worker, that's what I liked. I mean, I can't say that. I feel like that sounds wrong, but that's what I liked. The fact that even though the police didn't judge the women. They didn't throw it in their face like, you deserve it for doing A, B, and C. You deserve it because you're out there putting yourself like that. No, they didn't. They helped the women. And sadly, the Mary's case went cold for a bit until February of 1991, when police would receive another call to report another body, that they found another body on the same road where Mary was found. Actually, it was like 8 blocks from where Mary's body was found. And it was actually very, the same thing. That body was the same as well, being, positioned in a way. There was gunshot wounds, but the only difference is that this girl was shot multiple times, so more than Mary was. So that was a little different. And this new victim, she was shot once in the head and multiple times in the torso. So you can, already guess next. She also didn't have 2 eyes. So they obviously connected it because, come on, 2 times that these victims don't have eyes, and it's kind of the same MO. They were shot. And the second victim was, later on identified by her fingerprints. She was identified as Susan Peterson. And Susan Peterson was a 27-year-old woman who also was a lady of the night, a sex worker. And people would say Susan was very outgoing, very sociable, but at the same time, Susan didn't take shit from nobody. Even though she did the line of work, she knew, what it came with. Sometimes you would get those clients that liked it a little too rough, and she wouldn't take that shit. She was a very strong cookie and would defend herself. So police know Susan because there were sometimes, guys getting mad because they wouldn't get their way with Susan, and Susan would beat their asses, and they would get all butthurt because they got their ass beat by a woman, by a sex worker. So police knew this, okay, Susan's a strong bitch, okay? So they're like, damn. Now they're a little bit more of a panic because, if they felt like they can take down Susan, who was just in general a strong woman, they were like, maybe they're not only after, sex workers, but they also were like, well, maybe it's just sex workers, because that is only thing. But they were very panicky. The police was very panicky. All of Dallas was panicking because, obviously it was in the reports that these bodies were missing their eyes. And for a while, police would tell people to stay home, don't go out at night, especially, if you're a woman, stay home, protect yourself. They would end up trying to talk to, the sex workers, like, hey man, I get it. You're doing this, but y'all guys really need to stay home for your own safety. And sadly, this wasn't an option for many of those women because remember, some of these women are drug addicts. Some of these women are mothers. Some of these women are supporting their families, even with a husband, because even with their husband's paycheck, they're not making ends meet. So it was very out of the question for them to stop that, All they could do is take extra precautions. And police were really struggling to catch Mary's and Susan's killer and ended up contacting the FBI to get help on the investigation, hey, we wouldn't mind if you put it in, this time. So, like I said, they would contact FBI to ask for help. If they can check their database, if there was any other killings either around the area or anywhere else with the similar tactics, like no eyes, that the killer would end up taking the eyes. And the police would come to a halt because they would end up finding nothing. There was no record of anybody else doing that kind of stuff, especially with that kind of ammo of taking the eyeballs, because that was their main thing, the eyeballs. So police tried to do their own thing on the side since FBI couldn't help them, or they didn't find anything with them. They would end up in a way do their own kind of investigation, how can I say? Obviously they were investigating, but it was more like they were doing something on the low which nobody knew about. And what they were doing was they knew these sex workers couldn't stop because they had to support families. So in a way to help, the women, they would end up doing routine drive-bys just to see nothing out of the ordinary, nothing to be worried about. They would end up also kind of staking it out there and take pictures of every vehicle that would pass by or ask services from the women. And they even went to the lengths of hiring or making their female officers go undercover as sex workers. And they were just very concerned because, like I said, this guy has a medical background, like how he took those eyes out. And so they were just like, maybe it's a doctor, maybe it's a medical student or something. So they were just very stunned. They didn't know what to do. So they just kept trying to do their little investigation, like I said, staking it out, taking pictures, sometimes making their female officers take up that undercover job of being a sex worker. And they didn't have a suspect until like a month after Susan's death. Police were driving around the area, like I said, checking on the girls, and they would end up seeing Veronica Rodriguez. They would see her, working the street, doing her thing, and they would see that a man was, approaching her, and they decided, they were kind of like, how do we do this? Do we arrest him or do we just go talk to him? And they decided, like, you know what, let's arrest him because, he is soliciting, like asking for him, paying for, that. And police, as they were trying to kind of like take him in, arrest him, Veronica was begging them to not arrest him or take him in because she said that he was the man that actually helped her when she ran away when she was being attacked and when Mary was killed. And he was the one that the house that she ended up reaching to call for help. Shoot, my nose is all powdered up. Snatch that real quick. Give me 1 second. Okay, sorry. So they would still end up taking him because, like, hey, we still have to take him in. So we're not gonna really grill him that hard. We just want to question him, if he knows anything. So they would end up finding out that the man they took in was Ashton Schlinder, something like that. So we're just gonna call him Ashton. So they would take up Mr. Ashton, and he was taken to the police station for the interview. And they honestly didn't get shit out of him. He was just very to himself, very like you could tell right away he did not want to cooperate with police. And obviously police took this into consideration and they became a little suspicious of him. And they became suspicious about him because Ashton actually, on his driver license, it would say that he would live not next, but very close to where Mary's body was found. And why do I feel this looks very... Hold on. Got me focusing my eyebrows. So they would see that this man lived very close to where Mary's body was found, but nothing else was found. Like, they couldn't push him. They couldn't force him to speak. Obviously, it was either up to him whether or not he wanted to talk. So they had to let him go because obviously he wasn't cooperating. And with that, the killer would actually end up striking again on March 10th of 1991. And the body of the third victim would end up being a woman of color. And her body was just dumped on the side of the road. So it was very different this time. It wasn't the same location. It was just there. And this woman would, they ended up finding her very, how can I say this? The damage that was caused to her was more brutal to the other two women. So it looked like this woman, ended up putting up a good fight with her attacker. And they noted that, she was completely naked when she was dumped. Her face, it was bad. Her nose was broken. She had cuts and bruises on her face. She was clearly beat on, and her cause of death was multiple. You can see my drink. Don't judge me if I drink this, okay? But they would end up saying multiple shots to her head. That was her cause of death. And can you guess? Yes, they ended up taking her eyes too. So eventually she was identified as Shirley Williams, like the paint. And she was a 45-year-old married mother of one daughter. And just like the other women, she was a sex worker. And she also worked at a nearby hotel as a housekeeper during the day. Sorry, cow. I said cow. I don't know why I said cow. But she was a housekeeper during the day to make money. And the police were hoping to see if they could find any DNA on her because, like I said, she looked like she was able to put up a fight. And they did end up finding some clues on her body. For example, they ended up finding like a piece of metal, like a little piece of triangle-shaped metal in her eye where her eyes were, taken out. And they were able to determine that the knife that they used was an X-Acto knife. So it's those kind of knives. It's not even a medical knife. It's one of those knives that you use to like kind of do like DIYs and shit or open packages. I know I use it because like I make t-shirts sometimes. So I use it to cut my vinyl. And they ended up figuring out like, okay, like, why is, a medical person using an X-Acto knife? But that was that. And they also ended up finding hairs on her left hand, some hairs on her left hand, as well as a pubic. Is it me or is a pubic word so like gross? Like pubic, like stank face. Like that word is so ugh. So they ended up finding a pubic hair on her body as well. So now that the police finally have some DNA evidence, which was a huge breakthrough for them, even though their DNA system wasn't still as advanced as it is today, they were just excited. They were pumped, like, okay, finally we're going somewhere with this. And this time, police kept finding, more evidence. And there was another witness that reported to be attacked by a client that may have been, the EyeBall killer. And this sex worker was named Brenda White. And the only reason she was able to escape was because when she had this gut feeling while being in the car with him, she just had this nasty feeling like, hey, you know what? I don't think it's safe to be with this person. So she was like, you know what? Never mind. I'll give you your money back. Just drop me off here. Like, just let me get off, like I'm just not feeling well. I'm trying to play it off. And this man ended up getting so pissed, his little ego was getting hurt. And he ended up telling Brenda, and I quote, "I hate hoes. I'm going to kill all you hoes." End quote. So I'm sorry, this is how I cope with things, okay? So it's like, I would not be able to sit there and look at this man straight in his face, I would literally laugh at his face, which would probably get me killed if I laughed at his face. And just to let you know, we love hoes here, okay? So, you know what? EyeBall killer, you're missing out. Like I said, I cope like this. So, back to it. Brenda, as she heard this, she was like, fuck that. She ended up whipping out her mace from her bag and just sprayed it all over him while he was driving. And she was like, deuces. She opened the door and jumped out and ran, which, girl, I salute you for that. Good job. This is why I say, dude, carry anything that you can. Grow your nails out. Spit anywhere. Bite, scratch, carry mace, carry a knife, carry a gun. It is not a safe world out there for us, even in today's world, So, this is what I mean. Carry that shit with you. So, she was able to describe her attacker as being a white male who was Mexican looking. Maybe he was a little bit of leche quemada. He looked like a mazapan. I don't know. But she pretty much made, use that as a reference because he was a little tan, He was a little leche quemada. And she also said that he was a muscular built and had salt and pepper hair, meaning he had white and gray hair. So when police heard heard the description, they were kind of like aguitados. They were like, damn, it can't be that guy Axton. It can't be that guy Axton because, first of all, he looked nothing. there wasn't a description of him, but they were like, no, not give it. It can't be that dude, you know? So they were kind of like, damn, like, we're kind of bummed that it wasn't him, you know? But they still kept an eye on him because it was just, they had this feeling that he was somehow connected because they felt like he knew something. So after Brenda White did her report, the police officers that were kind of leading the investigation decided to go to the Dallas County Constable's office to use the constable's computer. And supposedly the constable's system, like their computer, just had more information on like the residents or the people around the area. So when they ended up loading like the addresses of Oak Cliff around that area, they just ended up putting a random address, which ended up being 1035 and Dorado Avenue in Oak Cliff, which was Andy's, or sorry, Axton's address, which his ID said that. But when the system brought it up, they were like baffled because even though that said on his ID, the name of the house of the residence was under Frederick Albright. Who's Mr. Frederick? Charles's dad, his adopted dad. So Mr. Albright owned different properties, and Axton just happens to be renting one of those properties. That was really close to where all the bodies were being found. Let me use this one real quick. Okay. So the police think like, okay, like maybe it's this Frederick Albright guy could be the murderer. But as soon as, you know, they see like more information about him, or they said that they searched more, or that one of the police officers knew Frederick. But basically they ended up finding out really quick that he could have not been the murderer because 4 to 5 years before, he passed away as well, before the murders happened. So with this realization, the officers, one of the officers just kept staring at the last name, like Albright. Like, it sounds familiar to me. Like, who the fuck is this Albright? So then he ended up realizing that a couple weeks back, a report came in from a woman who wished to remain anonymous. And she told police that she briefly dated this guy who she met through Mary Pratt. And she said that at first he seemed nice, you know, very, very white and knight shining armor kind of guy, you know, kind of trying to sweet talk you and shit. And she did end up giving him an opportunity and shit. And as soon as he saw, like, he had his, like, I guess, hold on her, he did a full one fucking, not even a 180, he 360 and shit. He ended up flipping and would end up becoming very violent and abusive, and started expressing his weird fixation on, like, the taxidermy things with the animals, collecting them and stuffing them, and as well, like, being very, very fascinated by eyeballs. And she also stated that he had a lot, and I mean chingos of like X-Acto knives. And when the police officer asked this guy's name, like, who the hell is this guy? So she was like, his name is Charles Albright. So Charles Albright, now at that time, he was now 57 years old. And when police searched him up in the system, when they saw his record, they were like, oh fuck. Like, they saw his extended criminal record for stealing, for being violent, for that, you know, hurting a child, you know, essaying a child. He also ended up matching Brenda's wife, you know, the description she gave. He ended up matching that exact description. They also, when they like look into him even more, they ended up also like seeing that he had a job as, or has a job as a newspaper delivery man. It looks a little suspicious, sorry. And they're like, dude, that's like the perfect time Like, that's like the perfect excuse in case we pull him over. Like, hey, what are you doing so late at night? What are you doing this early in the morning? And what are you gonna say? Oh, I'm delivering newspaper. Just a quick break. Y'all, if you have a hard time putting lashes on, get one of these. I know it's a little dirty, sorry. Get one of these if you have a hard time trying to see your lashes, because girl, this is a fucking game changer when I tell you. Like, yeah, it's a little like cheat, but fuck it, you know? Get it. And if I'm not mistaken, what's the company's name? Hold on. It's by Kiss My Lash, and I got it on Amazon for 20 bucks, dude. Then you can't beat that. Like, this is so convenient because it has this, and watch this. It's detachable. So you can either get this that's like 15 bucks or altogether for 20. And it's honestly very convenient when you're on the go, or like me, that I like to have my lashes really close to my lash line. It helps you because having these 3 mirrors, you can see the top, the center, and the bottom lash. So, dude, go get it. Go get this, okay? Again, it's by Kiss My Lash. Go fucking get it. It's worth it. Not sponsored, but it should. But I just wanted to give you that little information right there. But, so police, back to it. So police, ended up having Charles as their number 1 suspect. But police wanted to speak to Brenda first again, just to make sure, cover their asses, which is smart. You know, you already know some of these police just sometimes just go for it. I get it, you're in the moment, you want to catch the bad guy, but you also want to have enough evidence to convict him at the end of the day. So they ended up going back to Brenda, and they had like a booklet lined up of people, of just other people, and they also included one of Charles's photos. So as soon as, you know, Veronica saw the photo lineup, she right away pointed him out. She was like, that one. So they were like, okay, fuck yeah. So we got it. So they also ended up trying to, they did it with Brenda and Veronica. And Veronica right away, she also did it too. She was like, yeah, that one. But they also claimed that when Veronica saw his picture, that she started trembling, like she was fucking scared. And I mean, bitch, yes, same. Like, you would be fucking scared. You escaped this dude and now you're seeing his picture. Like, yeah, scary. So now that they had 2 witnesses in the case, that had picked him out, they were like, okay, they have enough evidence for this fucking eyeball killer to arrest him. So that's what they intended to do. And on March 22nd of 1991, a team of armed police officers ended up going to Charles's house. And it was a bunch of those motherfuckers. They were like ready. They were like ready to like take him down. They were like, let's go. So they go to his house, and the house is like surrounded. Okay, it is surrounded. And they wanted like, hey, I want to bust this house down. Like, let's fuck it. Like, let's go in there, ramble that shit. And they did. Once everybody was in position, they were like, 1, 2, 3, go. Boom, they went. And in the house, it was reported that the only people that were in the house was Charles and his wife, Dixie. And Charles was arrested and charged for the attempted murder of Veronica, because they didn't have evidence yet at the time to charge him with the murders. So they were just trying to use that to maybe like, hey, maybe I can get a confession from him. Maybe once he realizes like, oh shit, they're on my ass, let me just try to get a better deal and, you know, talk. But no, give me 1 second, okay? I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So they're on. So like I said, they didn't get nothing out of Charles. In fact, he was quiet the whole fucking time. He denied anything that was said, like, oh, did you sleep with any of these sex workers? He was like, no, that's disgusting. I would never be with a sex worker. That's what he would say. And he honestly ended up pushing and getting a lawyer. So once police, you know, searched Charles's home, obviously they were looking for more evidence, and specifically the eyeballs, which sadly they didn't find, but they did find newspaper clippings of the murders. They found random photos of women like out and about. They even found photos of the same women with their with the camera zoomed in into like their eyes. So that's weird. Um, they also found guns too, but none of them matched the 44 caliber that killed the 3 women. So as police kept searching the property, they soon discovered that Charles was renting a storage unit. He was renting a storage unit, and they were like, oh my god, like it's probably the eyeballs are probably there. So they went. They were like, en chinga, vámonos. So they went, and once they opened the unit, they were shook. Okay, they were shocked. It was like out of a freaking like scary, creepy horror movie, because when they opened that, oh my god, I don't have lipstick. That's fine. So once they opened the storage unit, they ended up finding loads of just creatures or animals in jars, as well as animals that have been taxidermied, and just weird shit in there. And they did find an eye, which they were like, oh my god, it's an eye. Like we found an eye, you know? They were just hyped because they were like, oh my god, evidence against him. No. That eye ended up being a pig's eye. So that's weird. So police go back to the streets showing Charles's photo around to see if anyone else knew him. And almost every sex worker knew him, which is kind of weird because Charles said he doesn't fuck with sex workers, you know? Like, that's weird. What a coincidence. Like, they all know you, but you don't know them. Like, So they end up like showing the picture. They almost all say yes. Like, yeah, we know him, and we tried to avoid him because many of us know that he can get a little rough. Like, yeah, he's sweet at first, but he likes when you kind of put up a fight, which is a red fucking flag unless consent, you know? So they end up bumping into this one sex worker, you know, and she ended up saying that she was a very close friend of Shirley Williams, the last third victim. And she would say that Shirley would always wear this yellow raincoat. And they were like, that night before, we were both working together, and she had her yellow coat on. So she's like, I did see that Charles was coming up, and I didn't want to fuck with him. So Shirley was up for that, you know, she said. So I kind of sneaked a little bit to the side where he wouldn't see me, because he's also been known to take 2 at a time, and that doesn't always, you know, like I said with Veronica, didn't end well. So she didn't want nothing of it. So she did tell Shirley, like, hey, are you sure you want to do this? You don't have to go with him. Like, we can pick up the next one. But Shirley, needing the money so badly, she was like, okay, yeah, you know what? I do need to go with him. I do need to get this extra cash. So Shirley was wearing that same yellow raincoat when she left with Charles. And they also said that Shirley would take her clients to this specific field. And when that Shirley probably took Charles to that field. And police go in chinga. They rush to that field. And right away, they find Shirley's raincoat covered in blood. So police have to end up taking, you know, like, they already held Charles for a minute. They investigated him. He had a lawyer. So they had to let him go for a bit. When they did, and they ended up having to keep an eye. I don't think I should say that. They ended up having to keep an eye on him. Okay, so sorry. So as he's out, you know, police are rushing everything. They take these hairs from the raincoat to get tested, and it turns out to be squirrel's hair. And it's specifically, this hair from the squirrel is from the tail. And well, when police were searching Charles's home, they ended up finding a old vacuum bag. They ended up finding an old vacuum bag that had a lot of hairs in that had a lot of hairs in it. And they ended up matching the same hairs that Shirley had on her raincoat. And not only that, in the bag, there was also some other different hairs found that ended up matching Shirley Williams' hair texture. So it matched to her hair. And the same hairs that were in her hand ended up matching Charles. And so police, like, they were like, okay, awesome. Like, it matches Charles, but sadly police didn't have enough evidence to charge Charles with the first two murders, only with Shirley's, which I mean, it sucks. It sucks ass, you know, but if you can get him by one, I think that's honestly the best, you know. Not obviously you're not gonna get justice for all the victims, but if you can get him at least for one from one murder, like that should be it, right? So police ended up charging Charles, arresting him, and he ended up pleading not guilty, which, you know, we all know once you plead not guilty, it goes into trial, and it did, which was a bit of a mess, if you tell me, because a lot of things were coming out. Veronica, remember the one that was on phenomenal drugs, would end up taking her statement back because she was scared of Charles and she was tweaking. And would play it off there at court, saying that no, that police were kind of forcing her to call him out in the photo lineup, that they were forcing her and pushing her to specifically call Charles out in that lineup. But even with all that, you know, sadly, like I said, Charles wasn't able to be charged with the first two murders, but with Shirley's, he was. And the jury on December 1991 ended up finding Charles Albright guilty for murder of Shirley. And he was sentenced to life in prison, which he actually ended up going through. And on September of 2020, Charles died at the age of 67, which I feel like he could have done longer. He could have pulled through more. And people would say, like, in prison, he was in that unit where, like, it was the more chill people, the one that were more calm, not causing any problems. But he was very weird. They would say that there was, like, photos like of eyes, like, cut out for magazines all over his room, which is like, bitch, like, why is anybody letting him get a magazine, you know? But that's just me. So that is the end of today's case. Let me know your thoughts, any comments. What do you guys think? This is where I say fight, you know, fight. Carry anything that you can, because there are sickos out there like Charles, you know. I feel like he had mommy issues. Why do I feel like he gives off that energy of having mommy issues? I mean he was put in for adoption, but I mean, better than being beat or left for starve, you know. She thought about it, right? She was like, you know what, I don't want this. She gave you a better chance of a better life, which you did end up getting. He wanted more. Sometimes it's not enough for people, but like I said, that is it for today's case. Go ahead and tell me your thoughts about this case, you know. Have you heard about it? Have you seen anything like this? Like, tell me, you know. Please go ahead and like and subscribe. Go ahead and hit that notification bell. Again, thank you so much. Please be safe out there. Please be safe. Be smart and have fun. I'll see you the next time.